this Monday.
I've got shit going on, like the realest shit I've ever had in my life.
Get ready to face your fears.
But the only way that I can be in a place of peace of mind is by really approving and validating myself in the moment. Total self-approval. That is a fucking revolution in a world that really is about disapproval.
Wreck your reputation.
I wasn't being like Mother Teresa over there.
And spiritually shake it up with spiritual maverick and mastermind, Cassie Underwood.
Nobody wants to look at how we're being dishonest. So just like lie less and your whole life is going to change.
On an all new intentional living with Courtney Meyers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now. Hi, Cassie. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I'm so excited that we worked everything out and we were able to jump on and chat today.
Thank you so much for having me, Courtney. I'm so thrilled and honored to be here.
I just love everything that you are doing, everything you stand for, this practical spirituality that you're bringing to the world, because I do think there's a little bit about this concept of like spirituality. You need to be like this perfect, like woo-woo, out there kind of a person. And that's just not the reality of it. I've talked about how like, you know, being spiritual means actually like owning who you are and like giving yourself permission to be messy. And there's this whole concept of like, the spiritual world, like striving for this perfectionism. I think that's even in like the topics of saying things like be your best self. It's a term I hate because I understand the meaning behind it, but like, why aren't you your best self at all times? Like, I think we're always being our best self. So I feel like there's this concept of striving for perfection when we talk about the spiritual world. And I just love how your message is kind of like show up as you are, be you. And it kind of aligns with me in that whole concept of like, be you in all your messy beautifulness. So like, how can being you really help us step into our power and make a change in the world and be more authentic and real?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. And I have been aware of this messaging around being your best self and like pushing and forcing and all that. And like, you know, straight up, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for, it was 18 years. I am I've got anxiety. I do a lot of things in my life. I run a business. I have a kid. I can't be, I'm being my quote unquote best self, showing up with this like little Miss Perfect thing going on. That ain't going to happen. Like, it's just, I'm setting myself up for self-judgment and for failure if I do that. And two things that I have found to be really helpful for me is, first of all, to approve of myself completely for however I am and whatever is going on. So total self-approval. That is a fucking revolution in a world that really is about disapproval, especially when so many of us have been raised in homes where there was a lot of disapproval and that sort of thing. So approving and accepting myself no matter what's going on. So if I'm in judgment, approving of that, accepting that. If I am having a great day, approving of that, accepting of that. If I desire to have more money, more sex, more of anything, a lot of my clients really desire more fame, and they make them, some of them have come in making themselves wrong for that. And I'm like, right on. You want to have fame. Amazing. You want to be seen. That's fabulous. And then it turns out there's also, they want to be of service. They want to be a lighthouse in the world. And so there's always something that is even traditionally positive to whatever our desires are. And whatever we're going through, if we can really approve of it in the moment, that this is exactly how it's supposed to be. I'm not going to be in resistance to what is, just like I'm going to be, and this is a high spiritual teaching, but I am just going to be in alignment with reality as it is. And I am saying that from a place right now where my life ain't perfect. Like I've got shit going on, like the realest shit I've ever had in my life. But the only way that I can be in a place of peace of mind, and the only way I can hope to become even like a quote unquote better me, is by really approving and validating myself in the moment. So that's first of all. And once I can do that, then I'm like, okay, I'm actually cool with my authentic self. I wouldn't even call that my authentic self. I would call that I'm cool with what is. But then we have the question of the authentic self. What even is the authentic self? And I do think there's a lot of story going on right now that the authentic self is kind of like, telling people how it is, and like telling people off, and like putting up a lot of boundaries, and like, you told them that's right. That's like what authenticity is. And there's definitely a place for like channeling our rage and our grief, which is so real. We all experience these emotions, and there's a place for having conversations. But our true authentic self that is available in every one of us is the part of us that knows that everything's okay, that knows that everything's going to be okay, that trusts ourselves, that loves one another, that's able to just kind of let other people be as they are without trying to manage or change them, even if they're not acting the way that we would want. I mean, I have a lot of opinions about how people should be. I'm like, well, they should have said this, and then I should have said, like that sort of thing. Like, that's not the authentic me. The authentic me is the one who's like, how interesting, and like has a sense of humor about it. So really like rooting into your true self is about just like being in alignment with the values.
Well, it's almost like you're saying that true self is really rooted in love, and rooted in that compassion and that understanding and that empathy and that just kind of acceptance, not only for yourself, but for everyone. And if you really think about that, that's what spiritual teachings are always kind of trying to bring us back to, that oneness, that we're all connected. We're all one. We're all from source. We're all here to have this experience, to have all the emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the messiness. But at the core, we're all one. And so that's really, I feel like what you're saying too, is like, we got to come back to this place of just, it is. I mean, it's not right. It's not wrong. It's just almost like this baseline of we are here existing together. And when we can do that, we can all come from a place of less fear or anger or whatever emotions are ruling. I mean, there's a lot of that going on right now. And I agree with you. This whole putting up boundaries and telling people off. I mean, it's not helping anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that we don't want to put up boundaries. And it's not that, it's really just the place that we're coming from when we do these things. And it's really about, I think talking about oneness and like just remembering that we're all in this together. A Course in Miracles, which I've been a student of for many years, says that all minds are joined. So we're all we all kind of know on some level what everyone's thinking. We're all kind of, it's not that it's our business, but we're all in this kind of cosmic conversation. And when something happens or somebody's behaving in a certain way that I don't like, or I wish they would change, if I can get back to me and realize, first of all, it's not my job to change them. It's not my job to manage them. But that also I can have compassion for them. But my big lesson recently, and this is like a really hot, fresh off the press lesson for me, has been because I do go into compassion and empathy, but I can let my compassion and empathy override my self-respect in certain situations. So, well, they're going through a hard time, so I'll just, let them do that. Instead of, here's what I'm going to be cool with. And, I'm going to be over here, and you can be that way, but the arrangement of our relationship is going to be different if that's, the path that you're on. And that to me is authenticity. Like, I can totally love and accept and embrace myself. And I can totally love and accept and embrace where someone else is. It doesn't mean we have to be, in partnership, working together, best friends, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, that's essentially what I think healthy boundaries do create. You have that space you can give someone that space to be who they want to be and show up how they want to. And that's none of our business. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I go back to with my mentor over the last couple of years. The last 2 years we've been talking about it, is like, she constantly is bringing it up to me and reminding me to mind your business, mind your own business. Like, and it sounds selfish to like worry about yourself only, but that's really all we can do, I think, is focus on how we're showing up and what we're doing, and stop worrying about what the outside world or outside people or outside acquaintances or family, friends, anyone actually really thinks of it, because everyone's going to think what they want. It is what it is. They're going to think, do, act however they're going to act.
Yeah. And I just even want to say, so I remember thinking a lot about selfishness. I grew up being called selfish a lot, or the concept of selfishness was brought up in my family a lot growing up, like what's selfish, what's not selfish. And so I kind of like popped out, into adulthood with a lot of ideas about selfishness and kind of an obsession with not appearing selfish. Yeah. And whenever I'm trying not to look a certain way, I tend to, we look that exact way we're trying not to look. My favorite example is like, if you're, like back in the day, texting with a guy, and then I like text something kind of weird, and I'm like, oh gosh, now he probably thinks I'm crazy. Let me text him again to make sure he doesn't think I'm crazy. Oh God. And now I'm acting crazy. Like now I've sent so the same thing with selfishness. And what I think is really important about the concept of selfishness in, minding our own business is that so often when I wanted to fix something for someone else, when I wanted to help someone or had a really strong opinion about what they should do about something, that a lot of times came from a place of, I want you to do this so that I am comfortable, so that I don't have to make a choice about how close I want to stand to you, so that I don't have to deal with my own discomfort. If you just change, and I'm going to present this to you by helping you and telling you what to do and having strong opinions. But it wasn't like I wasn't being like Mother Teresa over there. I was trying to make myself comfortable.
Well, do you think that's what we're all really actually doing when we're trying to control, when we're overthinking, like when we're doing any of those things you're talking about? It's all kind of actually does come back to that selfishness and the fact that we are trying to make ourselves comfortable. So how do we get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Yes, that is so good. I find that a really important practice for me. So I teach practical spirituality, and that means is I teach people how to apply spirituality to their lives in a way that helps them to release anxiety, to make more money, to transform their relationships, basically to make spirituality work for their actual lives. It's not like a thing you do one day a week, which I'm sure most people are pretty aware of these days, especially listening to our podcast. But just to be, super clear. So one meditation that I love for this, and I teach this in my course, Practical Spirituality, is a meditation where we really break apart whatever the fear is. Because if there is an element that we're afraid of discomfort, we're usually going to be thrown into fear around it. And so we break apart what the fear is. And then we do this meditation where we begin to imagine being in the situation with the other person. We mentally take ourselves through it, and we practice breathing, training our nervous systems to be in the situation without trying to change anyone. So we do like a mental rehearsal for the actual moment of the call or the conversation or, hanging out, and the tendency to say the thing or to have an opinion or judgment about the thing. And what that does is we've already had this like emotional rehearsal for it, so that when I'm in real time, I'm not trying to get so comfortable anymore by changing other people. I've already found out how to have this kind of like fortitude within myself to handle what's going on and to be like, oh, cool, they can be them. I get to remember that I have a sense of humor and, life goes on.
So is it kind of essentially like learning to release the fear? So you're facing the fear before you step into the situation so that the situation's not as scary?
Okay, that's definitely one way to put it. What I would say is that it's almost like you're building emotional musculature so that when you go into the situation, it's the same as an athlete who does a meditation to imagine themselves going out and playing the game and winning the game beforehand. And so when they're on the field, they're just kind of like enacting the play that they've already written in their head, and they've already felt all of the emotions around. They've already had, the little muscle twitches of sitting there in meditation and imagining it. Same thing in real time. If there's a situation in your life and it keeps happening over and over and over again, and usually it's not just with one person, usually that situation is happening with 2, 3, 4, 5 people in multiple areas of life, then if you can identify, okay, I have this situation, keeps coming up, I'm going to take responsibility. What's the fear that I have? And then I lead people through a set of questions to ask themselves about the fear. And then we go through this meditation. Yeah. And we really do. It's not that the fear is completely released, but it's that you're not afraid of having the fear anymore.
It's almost like muscle memory, like you know how to manage it in the moment. I mean, so do you see a commonality in the questions when you're asking people of where that fear is coming from?
So here's the way the questions work. And anybody who's listening, you're welcome to write this down and follow along and really create a shift in a fear that you're having. So the first thing that you'd want to do is think of an area of life where things aren't going the way you want them to. Okay. And we could come up with an example. I'll use one that a lot of people have. The fear would be paying for XYZ expense I have. And then we look at, okay, so you have to pay for a big thing. It freaks you out. You want to pay for it where you need to, and it freaks you out. The fear beneath, and then so the question is, what's the fear beneath that? The fear is, I'm not going to have the money to pay my other bills, or I don't know how to get the money. What's the fear beneath that? I'm going to run out of money. What's the fear beneath that? I'm going to end up on the street. What's the fear beneath that? I'm going to be all alone with my kids on the street. I'm not going to be able to feed them. It's going to be really humiliating for the family. And you go all the way through the fear. Face that thing that we've been avoiding. Or I'm going to have to move in with my parents. It's going to be humiliating. I'm going to have to call XYZ, whatever it is. And so you take the fear all the way to the bottom. Then you ask yourself how, and people hate this question, and they always try to get me to change the question. They'll be like, I think you should phrase it this way. This happens all the time. I'm like, no, I created this at Harvard, and this has been tested with thousands of people. We're not changing the question because you're uncomfortable answering it, but thank you. But I am committed to getting you free. And this happens even with clients I've had for years. They're like, how about saying it this way? Okay. So, because you don't get the answer you need if you change the question. The question is, how am I being dishonest? Nobody wants to look at how we're being dishonest and why? Well, we've been taught since we were really little that being dishonest means you're going to get in trouble. We're bad people. Only bad people are dishonest. Yeah. But we're all, right? So, but we all are dishonest in some way. It's like, let's just normalize it. There's part of my course, Practical Spirituality, where one of the lessons is called Go Light on Lying. So just like lie less, but just lie less and your whole life is going to change. Yeah. You don't have to stop. I'm not asking you to do the impossible. Just lie a little less, like one lie less a day. So, but this kind of dishonesty that I'm really asking about is not about like a flat out lie that you told, although we do that all the time to spare people's feelings, to stay out of, to what we think is sparing relationships, even though lying makes us feel disconnected. We think it's going to keep the connection. It actually makes us feel disconnected. So how am I being dishonest? And usually the dishonesty is, for example, I can't handle this. Of course you can handle it, right? Like you can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
The dishonesty is thinking that this one expense is going to ruin my life. To think that there is, one thing that people get to remember in the dishonesty is that I have to do this alone. There is a universe, you can call it whatever you want. Some people call it, mother divine, God, goddess, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, that is guiding us every minute of the day, and it's inside of you. And that applies to money too. It applies to anything you're going through. So we remember in the part, how am I being dishonest, that I'm doing this alone. No, you're not. You've got this like incredible wisdom because you're part of the divine. You've got wisdom about any amount of money you need. You've got wisdom right there in the moment if you're open to receiving it. So those are some examples of dishonesty.
How do we tap into that? Well, how do we tap into that wisdom?
Great question. Yes.
Yes. Let's go there.
Okay, so the way you tap into it is literally you start by looking at your fears. We're doing it right now. We just tapped into it. And notice that the way we got there wasn't by we didn't start with God, whatever somebody wants to call it. We didn't start with I'm so spiritual, universe. We started with, I'm scared. I'm not going to have the money. I can't come up with the money. That's where we started to get to, oh yeah, we have great wisdom of the divine. So you start with your human self. You start with the fear, and then that's your access. First of all, you're wanting more.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get practical.
Yeah, because I understand that, and I totally get that. I know we have all the answers within, and they come. But when you are in a state of fear, money is something that causes real fear. It causes anxiety. It causes stress. And even you could admit, I'm scared this, and you could go through that laundry list of things that the humiliation, I'm going to be on the street, all those things. But when you're going there, that brings up so much emotion. It is so hard to say, yes, the universe has my back in this scenario. It is really hard to step in and feel not alone. So how do you pull that in, and how do you use that to get yourself out of the fear?
Okay, so we're only on question 2 of 6. So stay with me, okay? Because I'm going to take you there. We had to just get to the remembering part. Oh yeah, there is. I know. You take a drink of alcohol and then you feel the spirit. This is the alternative. This is the alternative to if you want to get there without drugs. This is the alternative. So. There's many ways to skin a cat. You do you. This is how I do it. Okay. So we go to, you find, how am I being dishonest? So really getting in the truth with yourself. And then you ask, what am I doing to reinforce the fear? So we have to get what am I actually doing that's disconnecting me from the universe, God, great mother, whatever name you want to call it. What am I actually doing? Because our actions and activities in life can actually be sources of disconnection from that. So it's by seeking the blocks to love's coming, as to quote the Course in Miracles, that we find that connection to the universe, to God, to source. That's how we find that, how we get connected. It's just by removing what's in the way of it. You're already connected. You have if you picture, you already have a channel, it just gets clogged. So we're just going to unclog it. Okay. Yeah. So we found out the dishonesty is one part of the clog. Then we have, what are we actually doing that is creating more, that is reinforcing the fear? So an example might be, I'm refusing to look at my bank account. I have been avoiding looking at my bank account. I have been avoiding dealing with the problem. I have been, not launching if I have a business, or not asking for more things I could do at work to make more money. I have a few emails queued up to send out to do XYZ, and I just am not sending them. So there's we get to look at, there's actually a path. You can already see there's a path out of the fear, because the universe is in collaboration with you. So if you need money, you've already come up with these insights, just take the steps. The universe is, even if it doesn't come through those avenues, it will come to you somehow. It will come to you. It can't be stopped, but you have to believe and take the steps. Okay. So looking at the actions, and then we look at what we're all avoiding. What is the worst case scenario here? And you write out what's the worst case scenario. You write out what would it look like if I were to walk through the worst case scenario with courage. So then we start to take a little bit of the resistance off of the fear even happening, which opens us to even more faith, more that clears the channel a little bit more. Because if we're in resistance to the worst, that is going to keep us in that fear, keep us away from actually looking at our bank account and all that. So we look at, how would I walk through it with courage? Well, if I had to move in with my parents, with my kids, or whatever it looks like, well, I am going to have humility, and I'm going to look at it as an opportunity for my kids to get to know their grandparents better. I'm going to reconnect with my childhood friends, whatever. You can make up a whole list of things you're going to do that it would look like. I'm going to be, of service in the shelter. You literally just whatever everybody has a different worst case scenario. And so being totally with your worst case scenario, not trying to be no, that wouldn't happen. It just, whatever it is, that's what it is. And that's great. How would you do it with courage and with dignity? And then, so now you have a game plan, and then you write down the best case scenario, and you really write it down. And write it until you start to feel the cells in your body shift. Then you write an action plan. And that's where you actually go out into the world. There's a line, faith without works is dead. And what that means is that I can talk about faith. I can talk about, the God, the universe. I know a lot of people who practice either witchy spirituality or go to church every Sunday, but they're still full of, all that anxiety. They're still not feeling it, because we actually have to practice what the action plan is. We actually have to open the bank account to have, that's when the faith comes, is after we open the bank account, after we send off those emails, after we start facing the things head on that we've been avoiding. Now we start to feel, oh my God, miracles are happening. Then you can really see, okay, now I'm reconnected. Does that make sense?
So it's so it's actually showing up and walking ourselves through, but you're going to play out both scenarios. So, and that is just releasing all of our blocks to whatever fear that may be. And I love how you're talking about writing it down, because I am a writer, and that's what I teach is writing, like the physical act of writing it down, how that moves it through you. There's something about solidifying that energy by writing it down that can help you. So I love that. I mean, what a practical, great way. And then once you can start seeing those miracles come in, that's when you even believe more and more and more happens. But
that's when you have, so now you have reference points. So even if something else comes up in the future, oh yeah, but that one time where I had to come up with $10,000 and I didn't know where it was going to come from, but I did the fear exercise and I took the actions and that miracle happened. This is no problem. The next time something comes up, you're I know how this works.
So how quickly can we shift into this?
Immediately. You literally, if you do, so here's the one thing that you want to watch out for. So first of all, actually do the writing, as you were saying. That is the actual writing, pen on paper, hand to heart connection. It's energy clearing. I tell my things with a pen and paper that I will not admit to myself without it.
Yes.
I will tell myself the truth on paper. And, you probably have that experience too.
Yeah.
If I'm just thinking in my head, I will just justify and make up little So I suddenly, there's the truth. And then, so where people tend to hang out is they either will do the meditation afterward, picturing themselves going through the action plan and, really being free, but then they won't take the action, or they'll jump up, not do the meditation and start taking the action. So their nervous system is still a wreck when they're doing it. And there's not a lot of, we haven't brought the universe or God or your faith into it yet. So once you've done that writing, do a meditation, doesn't have to be long. Just review what you wrote and then close your eyes and picture yourself taking the action plan, picture miracles happening, picture the best case scenario, picture yourself walking through the worst case scenario with courage. Remember that you are so guided and so supported. Then stand up and go do the thing, whatever your action plan was.
I mean, every single word, you had like so many words that are standing out to me in this, because they're the things I've been talking about and that I keep coming back to. You've mentioned service, courage. You've talked about writing, because writing with pen to paper, because it connects you to your heart. It moves the energy. It solidifies it. All of these things, I mean, and even connecting, all of these things are all coming together. And that's how we really show up in our own truth. Is it takes courage to do so. You have to get honest with yourself. But also, when we come from a place of service, that's when doors start to open. And service doesn't mean you have to be, like you mentioned, oh, I'm going to go serve at the shelter, which is great. And that is a wonderful thing to do. But service is showing up the best you can in any situation. And how can I serve today? How can I serve myself? How can I serve my family? How can I serve my children? How can I serve my dog? You know, like, how can I serve? It doesn't have to be on this big global level, which I know, especially right now, we can all get like really wrapped up in what's going on globally. But this whole concept of service and faith and coming back and showing up in that way, I think is lost, especially in our culture now in the Western world. Why is that?
Well, so it's very interesting. So I went to Harvard Divinity School, and that's where I had got my Master's of Divinity. And when we were there, we learned that the concept of religion, which is where we hear of a lot of service happening, the whole concept of religion is a Western concept. In other cultures, there's no such thing as quote unquote religion. It's just the way you live. It's just your way of life. So you wouldn't have to like go to a church on Sunday or go to a synagogue or go and, you know, go to your witch coven to talk about service. You would just, that's just part of your daily life. It's the value, you are raised in a value system, and that value system includes service. I think that where I've asked people recently, I've said, what are your values? And they have no clue what I'm talking about. Like, you know, we've run to a place where people don't know what it means to even have values. And so, you know, like that's, I think, you know, part of it is just culturally we have separated, because in Western thought, we label things, we categorize things. That's not how it is in every culture. Yeah. That's Western culture, you know? So we've lost that kind of internal wisdom that would be taught to you by the elders, by the different people in your community, that would happen in other cultures.
It's almost like that inner compass has gone awry, because it goes back to what you were saying. You know, if you're going to church or you're doing your meditation or whatever it is, but you're not actually acting in that way throughout your week, you're just like, it's almost creating this facade. We have become masters of the facade in the Western world. I think from the way we look on the outside, we do not walk the walk. We do not believe in that faith. We do not necessarily show up the way we say we are going to show up. We go to church. I mean, I heard the funniest thing from a friend over the summer saying, you know, we were talking, my daughter goes to like a church preschool, you know, a Christian preschool, like most schools are. And we don't, our family, we don't really go to church. We believe in everything, you know, but we don't actually like practice in that way. And we don't feel like we have to go to an organized place to believe that. But we have thought about actually joining this church because she loves the school and we would love it for the community. And I was talking to a friend and a mother that had her kids there. And I said, are you guys going there? And she said, well, we're CEOs. She says, church and Easter only. And I laughed because it's so true. So many of us, you know, like do that facade. We show up in that way on the times that we're supposed to. We do what we're supposed to do rather than what we feel we're called to do. And I think that is part of what has gotten us away in this Western culture from following this truth of who we are.
Absolutely. We can shape our entire identities. We can shape our career paths, our romantic, our marital paths completely based on what we're quote unquote supposed to do, what would make us look like a good person. And some of that, I mean, I believe that the instinct and the urge to do that comes from parenting and culture from when we're younger, where, give so-and-so a hug, even though you feel uncomfortable. Wear this dress, even though that's not what you want to wear, because wear it for your grandparents. Wear it because, like always kind of performing, creating this performance. And so I think when we get to be older, maybe we're no longer in performance for the type of people that we grew up around, but maybe we're in performance for another group, like for feminism or for, some other group that we have become part of. And we've learned to just suppress and subdue that internal voice that tells us in each moment what we need to do, who we are, and how we want to express ourselves in the world in favor of this other way of being that's not true to us.
Do you find that mainly with women?
I find it to be so with everyone.
Okay.
That I feel that women are leading the conversation about transforming this. Women and trans folks are leading the conversation about listening to the inner voice. I think that we have suffered more in some ways, because maybe not more even. I don't know why. I can't proclaim to know like why we're leading the conversation, although because women are fucking brilliant, but we really are. We're leading the conversation about being authentic. That is not and that's very cutting edge for dudes, like to be talking about authenticity. But there are so many men who suppress their emotions, who would have chosen a different career path if it wouldn't have made their mothers happy if they went and became a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. There's a lot of, we're all taught, some of us had very advanced parents, but many of us were taught to please our parents, and that is what success looks like. But that does not make happy people. That makes alcoholics. That makes, people with depression and anxiety. That makes people who feel like they're living a lie, but they talk themselves out of believing that but it looks so right on the outside. And if I lived a different way, I would lose all my friends and I wouldn't have any context for my life. I think it's everybody.
I think that's really what's happening now. A couple things. I do think it's like we are in an era of the rise of the divine feminine. So that's why our women's voices are coming out more and it's being more talked about. It's more accepted. I think that's why spirituality is actually becoming more normal, not so crazy and woo-woo. You're seeing leaders, you're seeing people on stages talking about this and it not being such like, what the hell are you talking about kind of thing. But then also I do feel that, we must have been raised, and I'm not putting this on our parents' generation, but there had to have been something that happened, because I feel like we are in a time where people in our generation are speaking out about this. We're talking about depression. We're talking about anxiety. We're talking about mental issues more. And that's all stemming from obviously the way we grew up, this performance type of mentality. Do this for, so-and-so, wear this dress in this picture to make you feel, so we look like this happy little family, whatever that may be. And I'm seeing a trend in that. I'm seeing a trend in a lot of this, whether you are in a career that's like public or not. I'm seeing it in a lot of people that we are dealing with anxiety, mental health issues, depression, alcoholism. And these things seem to be almost like accepted that this is what we have to deal with. But I think it's something we've grown up with, and it's a generational thing.
I think that I agree with you that there is something generational about it. And if we look at even like the younger, I'm 39. And if I look at the people who are younger than me, I had an assistant several years ago who I freaking loved her. And she was probably 10 years younger than me. And she was even more like, you know, this is how I am. This is who I am. You know, she just would show up exactly as she was. And, you know, if she had anxiety, she'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm just having anxiety today. Like the way that I grew up, I would never tell my boss that I had anxiety. I would be like, I have to pretend like I don't have anxiety, ADD, or any of these. Yeah, exactly. So, and I was like, cool. Okay. Well, we're just going to keep it moving, you know, do what you need to do. And, drink lots of water and do my practice. We would do like a meditation or something and then keep going through the day. But yeah, I do think that there's something about that. And I think that the sexual revolution had a lot to do with that. I think that women being able to, you know, even decades ago, being able to own our own homes, being able to get divorced, having to deal with the fallout of getting divorced, you know, once we had that right, abortion becoming legal, a lot of these things that have happened. And then now, of course, it's Roe v. Wade was overturned, but there has been so much that's occurred in the political world for women that I think that we have been able to embrace ourselves more. And like for me, I don't know. I mean, I've been able to avail myself of so much because I live in this day and age. You know, I've been divorced, and that's not even like that would have been so shunned years ago. Yeah. I've gone through an abortion. I've gone through a lot of these things that were really we weren't allowed to talk about or even like go through years ago. And I think that so much of the authenticity is coming from that sexual revolution, actually.
Do you see more women stepping into this power position to help usher this in even more?
Absolutely. I feel like so many of the women, so I have a group called the Maverick Woman, and it's for women who want to listen to that voice within. And it's a 6-month program. At the end, we go on a trip. We just went to the south of France and to Mary Magdalene's cave. And it was incredible. And what the whole point of the group is to really listen to that voice within and then enact it in the world in some way. And for many of them, that is through, you know, a business, through their motherhood, through their relationships. It's just listening day by day to that. And it's not, and so much of the work that we have to do is breaking down the fear of what other people think. That is one of the main things we have to work with. What will other people think if I charge money for my gift? What will people think if I, you know, even for some of them to come to a trip to the south of France, being a mother, will they think I'm just this crazy, selfish mom going on a trip when I have a child? That kind of thing. So to being able to like live their own truth in their lives. And once you can do that, it's like you can't be stopped from speaking up for everyone to be able to live their truths. So I do see that. I see it all the time. And Marianne Williamson is running for president. I think that she, and so many of her policies are really about supporting women and people who can get pregnant and go through, you know, these kinds of experiences in a holistic way that has been ignored before. And I think all this is like speaking to that larger feminine rising of the feminine divine.
I mean, what will people think? That phrase goes through my head all the time. And I think it's something that we're all kind of plagued with. That almost feels like the biggest handcuffs that we have out of everything in the world. What will people think? That is, in my opinion, our biggest block to anything.
I could not agree more. I have a course that's called Destroy Your Reputation, because if we can, it's like, that's what I had to do even to start doing spiritual teaching. I was so embarrassed. I'm from the literary world in New York City, very cynical on the atheistic side. Like nobody's talking about spirituality. That said, my friends were always like calling me on the DL and being like, hey, would you say a prayer with me? Would you teach me how to meditate? You know, I'd be like, absolutely. So I had to like kind of like destroy my reputation to do what I'm doing now. To make the choice to get divorced was a big deal for me. I was a spiritual teacher, and people had worked with me to do work on love. And here I was getting divorced, you know? So some of these, I've had to like walk through a lot of that. And it's still like, those are the big things, but I feel like, tell me if you relate to this, like in your life, do you go like for me, it's like little things throughout the day that will show up where I'm afraid of what other people will think.
It's everything. I don't think there's one decision I make in my day that I don't think, what are people going to think? It is like one of my biggest plagues. So, I mean, I talk about it all the time, is like, what will people think? And it's not even so much what will the outside person across the street think, even though that does come to play. It's more, it's more on a personal level. What are your friends and family going to think? What's your husband going to think? What's this person going to think? But it is universal. I go through my day all day, even though I know I shouldn't, thinking, what will people think? Which is so funny because my husband is the kind of guy that does not give a fuck what anyone says, thinks, or does. So he doesn't understand this side of me at all. He's like, who cares? Just do it type of thing. So we have this big contrast. And I'm like, if only I can have a little bit of that in me. And I see it in my daughter. She's only 4 and she does not care what people think. So I actually like applaud it. I'm like, thank God she has that side of my husband and not me, because it can be debilitating when you care so much what people think.
Okay, Courtney, I'm so curious about this and I love this conversation. Why do you think that you have that fear and he doesn't? Or he has it less?
I internally think it is just the way we were brought up. And I don't know if it's male versus female. And I don't agree that it is male versus female because my daughter doesn't have it. But also I've done a lot of work to deal with my own issues in it. So I really, really try hard not to put that on her. So I can't really say that. If I want to think about other conversations I've had, girls are raised to be the good girl and fall in line and be perfect. So I think there's a little bit of that. I think there's a little bit of that in that. But I also think it's just kind of the way we're brought up a little bit. I don't know. I have cared my entire life, as long as I can remember, about what people think about me. And I'm 41, so I'm only a couple years older than you. And it's like just in the last year and a half that I finally started pushing those limits and getting uncomfortable with the idea and trying to accept that, people aren't always going to like what I am doing. And that's okay. It still doesn't negate that feeling. Those feelings still come up. It's a constant message on replay in my head, but I'm facing it now head on. So I'm definitely in the trenches of dealing with it, but I don't know why. I've felt it my whole entire life. And I think I'm not the only one.
Oh my God. No, not at all. Not at all. It's like one of my most important, like people love when I teach on it. And I made the course, the course Destroy Your Reputation, because I have had to over and over again dismantle that. Even now, like going to pick up my son at school, one that's hot for me is like, I feel different than all these other parents. Do they think I'm like, different parent, So just like this kind of like, what will people think? It definitely still shows up for me. And and this is in no way, I had parents, who were just like the typical, parents that a lot of people have. But there was a lot of talk about how things would appear to others, or how it would come across. So that was kind of like ingrained in me as a child to think about that. A couple of things that have really like blown my mind in the past few years about how little I actually know about what other people think. Like I really have no clue what other people are really thinking. And even if I'm guessing, I'm probably wrong. So 2 things that happened. One was this was 10 years ago. I published a piece about my experience with abortion, and I had lots of fears about publishing that. And when I did, people would read what I had written, and their response to what I had written would be saying that I said literally the opposite of what I had written. So I was like, wow, I really have no control over, I wrote this down. You can read what I wrote. this isn't like an interpretable, it's like facts. This is, and then they're saying something opposite. I was like, wow, I really don't have any control. And then another thing that, so releasing like that, I could try as hard as I want to control what other people think, and I still might not get them to think what I want them to. So I might as well do what the fuck I want. And then, so that's first of all. And then second of all, I went to couples therapy with my boyfriend about a year ago, and I found out that his interpretations of certain things were so different than my interpretation of things that I was like, wow, like we are having a very different like experience in these, you know, we're having the same, we're going through the same thing, and his interpretation is like 180. So it's like, I really don't have any control. So I might as well just listen to that voice within, because she knows what to do. She knows the move, and I can just let the chips fall as they may.
That's great advice. Also, when you were talking about it, it made me think about the fact that like a lot of times we think people are thinking something and they're not even thinking about us.
Yeah, I love that one. So like, like the idea that it's, oh yeah, they're thinking about me, of course. Like, no, they're not. They're thinking about themselves, just as we all are.
Yeah, so we can become so obsessed with like, what are they thinking about me? They're not even thinking about me. So, I mean, you know, so we have to remember those things, but we are all having our very own experiences. We're all creating our own experiences. And if we can get honest with ourselves coming from within, we're all one, we're all creating this reality. And that's kind of like what we're talking about is like, with any situation, we are creating what we are experiencing in ourselves. So like, yeah, I don't know. My mind is going to a lot of different places right now, trying to like manage this whole, because I'm constantly thinking, okay, what are people going to think of this conversation? What are you going to think about me? You know, it really is a play. And I just find that so fascinating how we can all build this up and we're all doing it. So like, how do we change consciousness? How do we change that in all of us?
Well, first of all, I think you're fucking awesome. That's what I'm thinking about you. Okay. So we can just take that one off the table. I think this is a brilliant podcast. I think you're so good at this. Truly. So that's first of all, but second of all, how can we change this? I mean, for me, it's been a decision. And then just first of all, I am deciding to walk free of this fear in as much as I possibly can, knowing that as I get more and more free in my life, I will actually become available for new experiences and new fears because my life is going to grow. So one thing is we go back to that fear exercise I talked about in the beginning, and that's called expand beyond fear. So a big thing for me that has been transformational has been just catching every fear that I have and writing it down on paper and then taking it through that process, because I get every time I write down one of those fears and then I take it through that process, I get more and more free. And it really does work. And I really get, oh yeah, I already did this meditation. I don't, I'm not going to be in their head about this anymore. Yeah. And I don't even know what they're thinking. And to your point, like I've had things where I've been afraid of what somebody thought of me. And then the next time I meet them, they're like, what was your name again? And I'm like, wow, I'm glad I made a big impression. They were clearly not thinking what I thought they were thinking. But like I'm a big believer in like, you can't talk your way out. You can't intellectualize your way out of a fear. I can't talk. I can know. I don't need to think about what other people think of me. It's not my business. I can know that intellectually, but I literally created that fear exercise that I talked about earlier, and I still cannot predict what will happen on the other side of doing the fear exercise, because I always have a huge transformation and insight. So, I mean, I know it sounds almost rudimentary to do it, to write these things down, to do that meditation and take the action. but it's also transformational. So to me, it's just catch those fears, be aware of whatever, like have a note section in your phone where every time you notice a fear come up, you write it down. Every time you're on a run, you notice if, I'm afraid somebody's going to see me on this run and think I run weird. Write that down. I'm afraid that, like literally whatever it is. I'm afraid that people will think I'm really cocky if I get this car that I want. Write that down. Anything, write it down. And on the other side of all those fears is your true self. You living as your true self, abundant, free, funky, living a true life is everything.
I love this. Coming from the Harvard girl, you can't logic your way out of this, but it is.
You can't.
But it is so true. I mean, it is so rudimentary. Spirituality is so, and like tapping in it literally comes down to the basics. I've had this conversation before. Am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? Am I drinking water? Did I get outside? Like we complicate things so much, especially when we get into our heads, and we just need to strip that all away and go back to the basics. Like, okay, this is, I'm scared. Why am I scared? Like, what do I need to go for a walk and, work this energy out? Do I need to just write it down? Like, it's so simple, but like it is, like you said, so transformative. So
you're right.
How do we work with you? How do we work with you?
Oh.
How do we get in touch? How do we listen to your podcast? How do we get all of your logical Harvard brilliance and your practical spirituality all mixed in together?
Okay, thank you so much for asking. So first of all, my website is CassieUnderwood.com. That's Kassi Underwood, like Carrie. And then, so that's where you can find out, you can get my free morning meditation, which I recommend that everybody do. It's a 1-minute meditation in the morning. It'll change your whole life. And that's for free through my website. You can also work with me one-on-one. So if you go to the work with me section, I have a couple of spots open right now. And then I have a group called the Maverick Woman. And that is a really powerful mastermind that's 6 months. And I have all my video courses, including practical spirituality, are available on that work with me tab. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Cassie Underwood. And we also just opened up a TikTok, which has like 5 followers or something. I'm not exaggerating. I think we have 5 followers. But watch me grow. You can be one of the first. One of the first.
Get it on the ground floor.
That's right. You can say that you knew me when I had 5. So when I have 10 followers, you can say that you knew me when I had 5. So that, I think that's at Cassie.Underwood on TikTok. So it's a different one. It's at Cassie Underwood on Instagram, Cassie.Underwood on TikTok.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll put all that information in the show notes so that you are easy to find. Your TikTok included. We'll grow that more than 5.
So hilarious.
And thank you so much, Cassie. I really just am so excited, and I really enjoyed our conversation today. I loved getting to talk to you.
Me too. You're awesome, Courtney. Thank you so much for your authenticity and just like really bringing your whole self to this. This was an awesome interview. You're so good at this, and I think that this show is super important. So thank you for the work that you do in the world.
Thank you, and thank you for your work. I'm going to check out your Maverick Woman thing because that sounds so cool. I love it.
Yeah, check it out. Book a call with me. We can do a call about it.
I feel like we wouldn't do the work though. We'd probably just chat. So. Oh
no, I would keep you. I would make sure. Hold you accountable.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. And I hope, and I can't wait. Well, I hope we get to talk soon, but I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, Courtney. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Cassie Underwood, for such a great and fun conversation all about spirituality, how we step into it, and how we truly face our fears so that we can show up as our most authentic and real selves in the world. If you want to work with Cassie, I'll put all the information of how to get in touch with her in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on the website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find books, courses, and everything else we have going on. I can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.